entirely in you.
Definitely.
In you and your name. That's what people don't give a f about those 3 letters.
At all.
At all. They just know Terrence Crawford's the best. And who he's fighting, who cares? Like, whatever it is, that's the big fight. It doesn't WBO, WBC, no, IBF. Nobody gives a f.
Guys, please stay down in the front.
Joe Rogan didn't miss the opportunity to talk about Terrence Crawford's shocking decision to hand Canelo Alvarez back the very belts he had just won. For Rogan, it wasn't just a post-fight gesture. It was a statement that shook the entire boxing world. This was the defining image of the night. Fighters spend years dreaming of those belts. They train through pain, sacrifice family time, and even risk permanent damage to their health just to touch one. And when they finally get them, most guard them like treasures.
I have a lot of potential to be one of the biggest star in boxing.
Do you think it's like a mental thing when you have all that pressure and you go in there and you get, like, some would say you got like embarrassed kind of?
It's hard. It's obviously hard.
Yet Crawford, after achieving one of the greatest feats in boxing history, handed them back. Rogan explained that this wasn't weakness or indifference, it was confidence in its purest form. Crawford understood that the sanctioning bodies would issue him new versions. He didn't need to take Canelo's physical belts home. By returning them, he made a statement. The victory and the legacy mattered more than the objects. To Rogan, this resembled the deep traditions in martial arts. In judo, competitors bow before and after combat. In Muay Thai, opponents embrace after trying to knock each other out. Crawford's act tapped into that same sense of shared respect. It was a reminder that combat sports at their best are about honor as much as dominance. What struck Rogan most was the timing. Crawford didn't wait for a press conference or a media opportunity. He did it in the heat of the moment when emotions were raw and cameras were rolling. That, Rogan argued, is what made it genuine. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished. It was a champion acting from instinct.
To be honest, when I set my sights on doing something and I know what I'm capable of, it's not like a surprise to me. It's a surprise to y'all because y'all didn't believe me.
Before exploring the cultural impact, Rogan gave credit to the performance that made it all possible. Crawford didn't just beat Canelo, he controlled him. From the opening rounds, Crawford dictated distance with his jab, kept his defense airtight, and forced Canelo to fight on his terms. Rogan emphasized how rare it is to see Canelo, known for his composure, look frustrated. Crawford's timing disrupted Canelo's rhythm, his footwork cut off angles, and his patience made every counter sting more. Rogan compared it to a chess master calmly dismantling an opponent piece by piece. This level of dominance, Rogan argued, is what gave the belt gesture its weight. Crawford didn't squeak by on a controversial decision. He didn't need the belts to validate his win. The fight itself had already proven beyond doubt who the better man was that night. Returning the belts only amplified the message. Crawford's greatness stood on its own, untouched by politics or possessions. The belt gesture didn't just make headlines, it lit up the entire fight community. And Rogan dedicated a big chunk of his breakdown to how other fighters responded. Former champion Andre Ward was one of the first to weigh in, calling Crawford's act a rare moment of class in modern boxing. Rogan respected Ward's words, pointing out that Ward himself was known for his professionalism and humility in the ring. If a guy like Ward calls it champion behavior, that's serious validation, Rogan said. Then there was Errol Spence Jr., who had shared the ring with Crawford in one of the biggest fights of recent years. Spence admitted it was something unusual to see, almost unsettling in its simplicity. Rogan analyzed Spence's reaction as a mix of respect and surprise.
Which I think is really interesting. The Crawford-Canelo fight.
Beyond interesting. Fascinating.
Because how does Crawford compete with that size? Crawford is leapfrogging. He goes to super middleweight.
47 to 54 and now to 68.
You could tell even he didn't know what to make of it at first, but deep down, fighters get it. They know the grind. They know what a belt means, and giving it back, that's shocking in a good way. From the MMA side, Israel Adesanya applauded the move as a show of alpha energy. To Rogan, that phrasing summed it up perfectly. That's exactly it. It takes more strength to give something away than to cling to it. That's not weakness, that's dominance. It's the ultimate flex. I don't need this to prove I beat you. Even retired UFC fighters like Daniel Cormier chimed in, praising Crawford's class while noting how rare it is in a world where belts are tied to paychecks and negotiations. Rogan agreed. DC knows, it's not just about winning a belt, it's about what comes with it. To give that up in front of the world shows a different mindset. Not everyone was convinced. On social media, critics accused Crawford of putting on a show. Some fans claimed it was fake humble, a publicity move designed to soften his image or to plant seeds for a rematch with Canelo. Others argued it was disrespectful in its own way, like saying the belts didn't matter. Rogan, however, pushed back against that cynicism. He explained that the authenticity was clear in Crawford's demeanor. If you really watch the clip, look at his body language. That wasn't staged, that wasn't polished, that was raw. He stressed that fighters, more than fans, know the difference. To Rogan, the most telling part wasn't the media buzz, but how fighters themselves reacted. Across boxing, MMA, and even wrestling, the consensus leaned toward respect. That's the thing, Rogan said. Fans can argue optics all day, but the people who have been in the fire, who know what it costs to win a belt, they felt it in their bones. That's why it matters. Rogan then zoomed out and looked at the bigger picture, what this moment revealed about boxing itself. He reminded listeners that belts in boxing are not just shiny objects, they're political tools.
I'm just saying, like, say if Canelo was the champion at 147 to go up 168.
Right, one jump.
Yeah.
It's a big jump, too. 21 pounds. It's a lot of weight.
I spar big guys, though.
Do you?
Yeah, I spar big guys. You know, it's different in the fight, but I believe in my skills and my ability, and I believe in my team.
That would probably be the biggest fight in boxing.
Sanctioning bodies like the WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO make millions off title fights. Promoters leverage belts to market shows, and fighters often stack them up as symbols of their greatness. It's not just pride, Rogan explained. It's money, it's clout, it's leverage in negotiations. That's why Crawford's gesture felt so disruptive. By handing the belts back, he challenged the very foundation of boxing's belt-driven culture. It was a statement that greatness is measured in the ring, not by how many straps you carry. Rogan contrasted this with MMA. In the UFC, there's usually only one belt per division, making it clearer who the champion is. Boxing, on the other hand, has become notorious for having multiple champions, interim titles, and confusing hierarchies. Half the time, casual fans don't even know who the real champ is. That's how crazy boxing has gotten with belts, Rogan said. Crawford's act, in Rogan's eyes, cut through that noise. It's like he said, "I don't care about the politics. I know I'm the man and everyone else knows it too." That's why it hit so hard. He stripped away the BS and showed what actually matters. He also tied it to history. In the past, legends like Muhammad Ali or Marvin Hagler carried their belts with pride, but they didn't need them to prove who they were. Fans remembered their fights, not the straps around their waist. Ali was Ali because of what he did, not what he held, Rogan explained. Crawford tapped into that same energy. He made it clear that legacy is about what happens in the ring, not what hangs on your wall. Rogan even suggested that the gesture might ripple into the future.
I'm going with Terrence Crawford. You know, big weight jump, a dangerous fight, but somebody's got to prove to me that they can break Terrence Crawford's will and that he can't figure it out against you. You know, it ain't no disrespect toward Canelo, but
Younger fighters could look at Crawford and realize they don't need to play into the politics to cement their place. Imagine if more fighters stopped obsessing over belts and just focused on proving themselves. That would change boxing completely, he said. For Rogan, that's what made the gesture not just a show of respect, but an act of quiet rebellion. It wasn't just Crawford being humble, it was Crawford challenging the sport to rethink what truly defines greatness. Rogan also gave space to the skeptics. He acknowledged that boxing's long history of promotional tricks made it natural for fans to doubt. Was this really a spontaneous act of respect, or was it crafted to boost Crawford's brand? Could it have been intended to keep interest alive for a rematch? Rogan's view was more nuanced. Even if there were promotional benefits, the act's power remained unchanged. The authenticity of Crawford's body language, the immediacy of the gesture, and the emotional resonance it created all pointed to something real. In fact, Rogan argued that the very debate showed its effectiveness. Whether fans praised it or criticized it, they were talking about boxing in a way they hadn't in months. The sport was on front pages, social feeds, and talk shows, not because of controversy or scandal, but because of a rare act of humility. That, Rogan believed, was a victory for boxing itself. No major moment in boxing passes without controversy, and Crawford's gesture was no exception.
Don't get me wrong, okay? He's a good fighter, a great fighter. I always say before I see him calling me out and won the fight and everything, I say before he's a great fighter. But if you look at his career, mention one elite fighter. Just mention me one elite fighter.
The internet immediately filled with debates, memes, and hot takes. Some claimed it was a publicity stunt designed to make Crawford look noble. Others said it was laying the groundwork for a blockbuster rematch with Canelo. A few even argued it was disrespectful, like saying the belts themselves didn't matter. Rogan gave those theories air, but he wasn't buying them wholesale. He pointed out that boxing has always blurred the lines between sport and spectacle. From Don King's carnival-style promotions to Mayweather's money-flaunting persona, the game has thrived on theatrics. So of course people assumed Crawford was playing some angle. But Rogan countered that the immediacy of the act suggested otherwise. Crawford didn't wait for a press conference or a camera cue. He did it right there in the ring in front of a stunned crowd before anyone could spin it. That, Rogan said, is why it felt authentic. When something happens in the rawest moment, it's hard to fake that. He also reminded listeners that even if it had been strategic, that didn't erase its impact. In fact, if it was partly calculated, it was brilliant. Instead of trash talk, Crawford used humility to dominate the conversation. In a sport where negativity often drives headlines, he flipped the script. Rogan highlighted how unusual this was compared to the usual boxing cycle. Normally, after a big fight, the buzz centers on pay-per-view numbers, scorecard controversies, or post-fight callouts. Here, the conversation was about respect. That shift alone, Rogan argued, was refreshing. And he stressed one more point. Fighters themselves weren't treating it like a stunt. While fans debated online, most fighters from Ward to Spence to Adesanya saw it as genuine. When fighters recognize something as real, that's the ultimate stamp of approval, Rogan said. For him, that outweighed all the internet noise. Legacy was where Rogan spent the most time because to him, this was the core of the story. He argued that a fighter's greatness isn't defined only by wins or titles, but by the moments that capture hearts and imaginations. Crawford had already secured his place in history by becoming undisputed in 3 divisions, but Rogan believed the belt gesture elevated him into the realm of legend. He drew parallels to iconic snapshots in combat sports. Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston, Sugar Ray Leonard outlasting Marvin Hagler, Anderson Silva clowning Forrest Griffin before knocking him out. These weren't just victories, they were defining images that transcended the fights themselves. Crawford's act, Rogan said, now belonged in that pantheon. This is one of those moments that will be replayed in documentaries for decades, he explained. It's not just about what happened in the ring, it's about what happened after. Rogan also tied it back to how fighters talk about legacy when they sit across from him on his podcast. They rarely dwell on belts or money, they talk about respect, about how they'll be remembered when the gloves are hung up. The irony is the things they think will define them, paychecks, belts, stats, fade over time. What lasts are the moments. Crawford gave himself one of those moments. He stressed how this could shape Crawford's image forever. Even if future fights end in losses, even if he never boxes again, this clip will always exist. Fans and historians will point to it as proof of his character. That, Rogan argued, is more powerful than any belt ever could be. And he added one last perspective. Younger fighters would see this and learn from it. They'd realize that humility can leave a mark just as deep as trash talk. For Rogan, that was perhaps the most valuable legacy of all, showing the next generation a different way to be remembered. As Rogan wrapped up his reflections, he returned to the central theme: respect and dominance are not opposites. A fighter can assert absolute control in the ring and still honor his opponent afterward. Crawford proved it. Rogan emphasized that this balance is what makes combat sports unique. Beneath the violence lies a code of honor that fans sometimes forget. Crawford's gesture reminded everyone of that code. It was a message to fighters and fans alike. Greatness isn't about what you take, but what you give back. He contrasted this with the usual boxing narrative. Too often, headlines revolve around controversies, judges, decisions, promotional disputes, or personal feuds. Crawford gave people something different, something pure. For once, the story wasn't about business, it was about humanity. Rogan predicted that the belts themselves would fade into the background. Years from now, few will care about the exact versions Crawford won that night. What they will remember is the image of him handing them back to Canelo, a gesture that turned the moment from historic to iconic. He left his audience with a challenge. Think about what it really means to be a champion. Is it stacking trophies, or is it showing grace when you have every right to boast? Crawford answered that question with action, and Rogan believed fans should reflect on it too. And as always, he pulled it back to the listener. Was this the ultimate sign of respect? Or was it the ultimate display of confidence? The statement that Crawford didn't even need the belts to prove his greatness. That debate, Rogan suggested, would keep this story alive long after the fight itself was forgotten.